Hi, everybody, and welcome to Yoga Gabfest. And I'm here with Susan Cuda. We've been getting ready for our interview, and I wish that I had hit record actually a few minutes before because it was a very good conversation. So I just want to tell you a little bit about her. Susan has taught in Saratoga Springs, New York since 2010. She received her 200-hour yoga teacher training certificate from Gopi Kinnicutt, founder of Bhakti Yoga DC, and her 500-hour with Hatha yogi Mark Kinder, founder of Detox Yoga. Both trainings were traditional and grounded in the Yoga Sutras. Susan took over Mark's studio in 2013 and opened Namaste Yoga as the only donation studio in Saratoga. I think, or in the greater capital region, I could probably add to that. To combat the stress of operating a business, she developed a practice focused on diaphragmatic breath, position of the pelvis, and feet as points to ground her energy. Once grounded, she can view her habits and gently learn to create change. Susan's practice is what she brings to her classes and how she reconnects her students to their bodies. So welcome, Susan.
Thank you.
Yeah, so grateful to have you here. And
Grateful to be here.
yeah, it's so juicy, something that was coming up for me as I was reading your bio was like um the pelvis is kind of, it's almost taboo to invite people to bring their awareness down there into that area. And I hope that we get a little time to unpack that. But I
Oh
want
yeah,
to
I love that.
know, yeah, I want to know, where were you like in your life, or what happened when you came to yoga, and when, like, or yoga found you? How did that happen?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story, and it's actually kind of lengthy, so I'm going to condense it quite a bit. So when I was probably preteen, I had determined I was going to be a yoga teacher, and but I couldn't really figure out why I wanted to do that. And I thought when I looked back that it was maybe because of the influence of the Beatles.
Mm,
So then every approximate 10 years, there would be this niggle, become a yoga teacher. I'm like, I don't really even know anything about yoga. Why would I do that? And it seemed like one of those kind of crazy thoughts. And so in my 30s, it came on really strong. I ignored it. So finally, I was 47. There was a training at Yoga Mandali. I didn't even really practice yoga that much. I just leaped in. And it was really hard. The training was really hard because, and I realized it was hard because of the change that I needed. I needed to sort of transform, not sort of transform. I needed to transform, and I found it really challenging. But yeah, yoga was was not like my game plan. I didn't grow up with people who did yoga. I don't really know why the universe was, sprinkling yoga into my energy field. So yeah, it was kind of a strange journey, but I can tell you that it is the most beneficial thing I've ever done for myself.
mm, yeah. Likewise, I also had a similar draw to it, but I couldn't quite understand it, what
Oh,
was
interesting.
happening. Yeah. In fact, I remember saying to a friend of mine, I think I want to become a yoga teacher. And she said to me, well, Pam, I think you should probably do yoga first.
What a good idea.
She was a good friend. Yeah. Very honest and frank with me. So so when you did take your yoga teacher training, it was hard. Like, what would you say um your like biggest takeaway from it was?
Well, that I could do hard things,
Mm, mm-hmm.
because some of those practices were 3 hours where she'd have us, right, 3 hour practice is tough, but I did it. And it was expanding. I mean, I can't tell you how I would come home and I would know that I was different, but I was different in a kind of way that I'd not experienced before.
Mm,
So it was all the things I was learning, and I was clearly opening myself up like
mm,
I'd never done before, and I didn't know what to make of it. So I'm explaining it right now as if I understood it then, but I didn't really. I didn't know I was opening. I didn't know what was going on.
mm.
Um, and it was a little overwhelming at times, but partly because, I didn't really have a grounding practice. And that is where I really understood how important being grounded is.
Mm. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah, because you kind of get like spiritually blown open when you're getting into your body so much, and then you're like, whoa, how do I handle this energy? So,
Yes.
and I love that we're going to talk more about grounding. So what do you wish that was like different for you when you did take the training?
Well, I wished, I suppose if I were talking to someone else, I kind of wish that whole energy thing wasn't such a surprise.
Mm,
Um, and the way in which I wish it wasn't a surprise is that, you could explain to someone that there are changes that take place within each person. You can't really determine what is going to be the case for each individual, but that you are, if you're really practicing, that you are going to have these changes, and that have someone to talk to.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't manage it yourself. Right. Like write it down if that makes you feel better, but have
Mhm.
someone to talk to, a group to talk to. So having that be more open, it
Yes.
is huge,
Like
I think.
access to mentors that have done the training maybe, or have
Yeah, or the
like
teacher, you sit down and
yes.
say, "Hey, I know everyone's got
Yeah.
changes going on. Let's talk about a few of those things, Is
Uh,
anybody kind of freaking out, or are your dreams changing? Do you feel weird?" Or I don't know how you would want to address that. Those were things that happened
mhm.
to me. Other
Yeah.
people were super energized. I
Yeah.
just can't shut it off. Or, I'm having visitations, they could probably were open enough to perceive, loved ones who passed on.
Mm,
Um, so there are all sorts of things that happen to you, and we would talk about it, but I don't think everyone thought it was kind of weird.
right. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think, so one of the things that I do in my yoga teacher training that I facilitate is that I have sharing circles at
Oh,
least,
yeah.
weekly. And because we need to talk about this, and
Yeah.
yoga has become marketed in a way that it's all about fitness and it's not about the spiritual. So people are surprised when they're having these experiences and they become more sensitive to the energies around them.
Yes.
So, and then that grounding piece, I think also is, I'm thinking, I know that both of your trainings, I think, were on the second floor, right? So of the buildings. So you,
Yes, they
yeah,
were.
yeah. So, like we're kind of disconnected from Mother Earth when we're up there and we're not getting down further into the earth. So, and the way that it was done was to be outside in nature with the prana, receiving the support of the
Yeah,
soil and the fresh air and the
sure.
trees, with the roots growing underneath us while we're breathing. And then we feel grounded. So, and actually, so one of the reasons why I'm doing my yoga teacher training outdoors this
Right.
year is so important, because I decided I'm not going to do what everybody else does. I'm going to do it the old way. Welcome to the ancient future.
Yeah, yes. Yeah,
You know.
that's true. It is. And then we do divorce ourselves from the outdoors.
Mhm.
And we're going to talk a little bit about feet later in the
Yes.
interview.
Oh.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because you know it's kind of like we're just walking on Mother Earth, and it's like, no, no, you are, you are a part of this.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're not just a visitor here. We're here. We're part of this. We're rooted.
Mhm.
And if we cut ourselves off from that, we're missing a big piece. And you got that whole mind expansion and it just takes off. And the problem with that, I feel, is that we tell ourselves stories.
Yeah.
You
Mm.
know, I feel this way because I'm getting old. I feel this way because my parents had this issue and now I have it. Or I had this accident, or my someone boyfriend left me, my wife left me. There's stories instead of us getting grounded and understanding that we have the ability to heal everything, and that grounding with the earth is right. That's where you go.
Yeah.
And you don't have to I mean, if it's winter, in your area, okay, I admit that might be kind of hard, but you want to still have that thought in your mind and that feeling in your body that you're joining with the earth. It's important.
Yes. I broke my foot last year. You'll appreciate this. And I would go outside, take my boots off, sit on the edge of the I couldn't really walk because my foot was broken, but I would get off, scooch myself onto the edge of my porch and just plunge my feet barefoot, take my shoes off and plunge my feet right into the snow and just sit there with my feet in the snow for as long as I could tolerate it. And it really depended on how much of the inflammation was there, you know. And it's probably not safe for your skin to go straight into the snow. I don't know, but maybe it is. Maybe it's very natural. But I did it, and that was one of my most favorite things about having my foot broken. So so when once you became a yoga teacher, what do you feel like was the like how did that influence you in your daily life? Like the daily wake up, live your life,
Oh,
go to sleep.
wow. Okay, this could be a really expansive explanation. So again, I'm going to try to really focus. So I noticed a number of thought patterns that I had that were not serving me.
Mm,
Um, and if you read some of the like Yoga Sutras, you they allude to this, but it's not always in a language where you exactly understand what they're talking about.
mm,
Victimhood being one thing,
mm,
right? And the victimhood takes you out of your place of empowerment, and then it's someone else's fault, or you're under someone else's spell, or and then we build a story around that. So victimhood was one thing. And how I ate. So when I went into yoga teacher training, I was going through menopause,
mm,
and I found out that I was gluten intolerant.
mm.
So not only was I going through this yoga teacher training, which I considered grueling, some people did not. So they probably thought it depends on your level of fitness, I suppose. Um, but as I was going through all of this, I changed and transformed my diet, and that was huge too. But I kept expanding on all of those things. So it's not as if I came to the victimhood conclusion and moved on. I'm moving through it, right?
Mm.
And I understand more about it. And I understand more about food and how you eat it. And I understand more about energy and my relationship to people. So prior to my yoga teacher training, I worked in my basement making custom window treatments. So I was,
Mm.
you know, pretty much cut off from people. So that was clearly my choice. And I had to, and this was hard for me to like come out of the basement and be in community. And
Mm.
how, and I felt this is what one of the other big pieces here was I think I had sort of shut down my heart in a way where maybe there was a trauma, not really quite sure why, maybe just a bunch of little things that happened, but I found it hard to connect to people. And once I realized that, I had to work on, yes, on opening up. And
Mm.
I can notice that if I start talking about other people, that clearly this, I have shut this down. And so that's my cue to come back and say, okay, you need to reconnect. So
Mm,
those were all really precious things that happened, in a pretty short span of time. So I can see why the universe was knocking on my door going, it's time, get to yoga teacher training. This is what you need. And it was like, kind of cracking me open.
mhm. I
So
love
yes, those
that.
were those were big things, not at all small things.
I love that you brought up trauma because I realize now I became a yoga teacher in 2006, and it wasn't until probably 2 or 3 years ago that I realized the universe somehow saved my life by making me decide I wanted to be a yogi, a yogini. I don't think I would have had the skills I needed to work through my trauma, even though I didn't know I was working through my trauma while
Yeah.
becoming a yoga teacher. It was just like, child, go. Just go. So so tell us about like what have been like the most fulfilling yoga teaching experiences? Like what like who do you teach? What do you teach? What's like been, because the 200-hour and even the 500-hour really just introductions to becoming a teacher. They're really just giving you license to say, here's a piece of paper that shows that you have the wisdom that you need to do this. And then like we start to really like bring it to the table once we
Yes.
are actively teaching. So I want to hear about
Yes.
that.
Yes. So that's a huge subject right there too. I mean, a huge question to answer. So I, like all probably budding yoga teachers, you go out to teach with the wisdom of the people who taught you, and you rely on their wisdom. Right? So I didn't even understand most of it, although I thought I did. And it took a while and a lot of anger for me to let go and find my own space in there because I didn't trust it.
Mm.
And I just wanted to rely on a book. I just wanted to rely on someone. Right. Just give me, I'll teach this. Just let me teach this.
Just tell
And
me the right way.
I don't trust myself, damn it. And I know who said that exactly. Later on, I admitted to it, but at the time, it was just annoyance. But I could tell that I wasn't being genuine. It wasn't coming from here. It wasn't coming from my heart. And that was a transformation that I had to go through. So now I do things a lot more intuitively. And what I teach is, you mentioned earlier about the studio. So when I had the studio, it was really trying, as you have.
Yeah, yeah. So
And
beautiful, but so hard,
yes,
such hard
so
work.
hard. Yes. And so when you're holding space for people, you have to know how to hold your own space. And I did not. So this was another thing to learn. So as you can tell here, we've got this theme. I packed a lot of transformation into this short amount of time. And I had to really come to grips with how I was and what I was feeling. So I would go to these teachers that I considered to be experts, and I found that a lot of them were men, and I couldn't do their practices. So I had to transform it into more woman centric, female centric yoga. So that was
Mm,
one thing. And as I was doing that, I was slowly giving myself permission to embody my own feelings and teach from my own experience. And the more I did that, the more stuff I felt in my body, the more of the regular practices I had to change them up. And some of them I don't even do anymore because they're injurious to me. Not that they're bad for anyone else, but of course I have to teach from what I feel.
mm.
So certain things I just don't teach because they are, they bother my sacrum. And I know that that's the case for a lot of yoga teachers. Did I answer your question, or did I go astray on that one?
Well, no, I mean, we're talking about
Okay.
what we wound up teaching and what really influenced. So I think you're taking us down into that very taboo path that
Oh, the
uh,
pelvis. Yes,
the
thank you.
pelvis, right?
Yes,
Like,
thank
and
you for that reminder. Yes. So I had pain, right back there and low back. And I was trying to piece it all together. So you're reading, you're practicing, you're getting other people's opinions. And then I had to weigh that against what I felt. So finally there was, I mean, this has been a journey. I was looking into yoga and I found out there were a lot of things in yoga that really were, as I mentioned previously, male centric. And I had to just push some of those aside and understand that they were not for me. What was for me? So I realized that my pelvis, I was not paying any attention to my pelvis. And
mm,
that if I tipped it one way, I would have pain. If I tipped it another way, I didn't have pain. And then I had to start looking into that. And I
mm,
realized that yoga teachers, um, unless you understand this about yourself, you can easily hurt your sacrum, your pelvis, your spine by doing some of these practices incorrectly, repeatedly, over and over and over. So, as I looked into this a little bit further, I realized how your pelvis is affected by walking. So walking you think is a simple one foot in front of the other. Oh no.
mm,
No, it really is extremely complex, but it does show how amazing human beings are. But your walking affects your hips, affects your pelvis, affects your low back. And I have a program now where I try to take people all the way back down as far as I can get them, and we look at their micro habits.
mm,
How are you standing? So I'll see if you can see my hands here. So some students, one foot goes to the outer edge and one they'll collapse on the inner arch. And I'll point that out. And what are you doing with your knees? Are you throwing your knees back when you're standing? And this one, and I know you know these things too. I'll stand up for a moment and see if this helps. When you stand up and you do that, where you've got one hip out, one shoulder down, one shoulder up, one hip in, right? So this side shrinks and this side expands, and then this shoulder's down, and then in some ways we're twisted.
mm,
So it's not that your body can't do it, it's that these habits repeated over and over again are
mm.
not serving you. So your
Yeah.
body says, okay, nervous system says, well, here we are. You want to do this, so we're going to aid you. Your entire, all your cells are on board for you to lean into your left hip. And people don't realize it because it doesn't feel foreign because they've done it so many times. So we come back to, okay, your low back and hips are hurting now. Your knees are hurting. Your ankles are hurting. Let's see what you're doing. And so we dial it back so that the movements, you might stand on a block. You may stand on one of these, this the thing right here. It's because it's an uneven surface, and we'll really focus on where to start and dialing back those habits. And sitting, we think sitting is relaxing, and both of us are sitting right now. So, but
Mm,
it isn't. It's actually a problem for your sacrum and your low back, and
mm,
crossing your legs,
mm,
another issue for sacrum and low back and pelvis. And it's these things where we work to change them. So that's my Saturday morning class, by the way. That's what we focus on. And so what this class does is it prepares you to be more active. So you start seeing what it is that your patterns and habits are doing to you. You experiment by changing them. So just because I'll tell someone, don't do that, do this, it's a
mm.
suggestion.
Right, right.
Yeah. And
Now, just
yeah.
to say two things. When you stood up, I remembered. that she had a belt around her. So if you have a yoga strap or a rope or belt,
Oh,
grab
yeah.
one because she's going to give you another demo in a few minutes. And also that yoga class that she mentioned is on Saturday mornings at Ageless Acupuncture in
Yeah,
Saratoga
at 9 o'clock.
at 9
Thank you.
a.m. So, and we'll go over it again later, but so you were saying about the kind of, realigning, finding that alignment. That seems to be your passion, and like when we get aligned physically, we can be aligned spiritually as well. And it's all, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
because we remove the blockages. Yeah. So,
Yes.
yeah.
And you start realizing that, because if you stay too rigid, then you don't step outside your box. And you need to learn to step outside your box. And I know that's hard because I've stepped out lots of boxes, and I admit that some of them are very challenging, but
Mhm.
you want to, because it's also very freeing.
Yeah.
You know? So
Mhm.
having the yoga studio was hard. And but what I found from doing that was I found really myself through all of those temper tantrums that I had when the studio wasn't going the way that it was supposed to, and the emotion that poured out of me. I went, and I would notice that my body was doing weird things as I was going through these emotions. I would be standing strangely, and my hip would hurt and my knee would hurt, and I realized how much, well, really, it's emotions that actually move you. You're it's an emotional world that we
Mhm.
live in.
And as women, we hold so much in the womb center and the pelvic
Yes.
floor.
I keep pointing at you. If we were having a conversation face to face, it would be weird. Sorry.
No, I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
I have found that I've had to become so brave when I mention things like your sex organ, your pelvic floor, your perineum, and describing where those
Yes.
locations are in the
Yeah.
body. And sometimes I get a lot of resistance from my students, and a lot of times it's a breath of fresh air for them, and it's like, oh my gosh, because of what I found is like in the patriarchal lineage of yoga, there is no mention of sex organ or breasts. Like it was like we didn't have them, like we were Barbie dolls, you know. So like at the end of the movie Barbie, she goes to the gynecologist. That's the
I
first
know
thing
that was
she
funny,
does.
wasn't it? I
So,
love that.
um, have you experienced that, like with your students, and how to
Yeah.
help them move past it? Yeah.
Yes. And so when I was first teaching that, I think probably I was a little embarrassed to bring it up, but I felt it was so important. And I would introduce it and say, because one of my students was, I was certain that her pelvic floor on one side was really tight.
Mm.
And so I had to explore that. So whenever my students have an issue, I then explore that, which I love. Like, bring me your issues, I'll learn more. And, I then found out there's this whole, oh my God, it was like an amazing amount of information that we weren't really recognizing, just as you pointed out. Because yoga did start out, it was for men, and women weren't really even involved for quite a while. In fact, you couldn't tell a woman, it was sacred information and we weren't to know it. So when I did introduce it to them, particularly the perineum, if you would say that, they would laugh and there would be some embarrassment. Like, this is your foundation. Your pelvis is your foundation. Everything in there needs your attention. It needs your guidance. You need to, excuse me, reprogram the nervous system so that things are flowing and it's working. Okay? Don't ignore that if you have tightness or you have pain or discomfort. You want to go there and you want to find out what's at the root. That's your root. This is your grounding and your foundation right here.
Yes, and we're reclaiming our femininity and our right to be here when we talk about and
Mm.
experience the fullness of the female body. And it's just it's amazing. You know, I was in India just right before the pandemic, and I wanted to catch a Shivananda yoga class, which Shivananda was the first to bring women and allow women into his ashram and to study yoga.
Oh, awesome.
And
I love it.
yeah, and so I was at his ashram in Rishikesh in India, and they did not have a female teacher, so I was not allowed to take the class. And even in this tradition that brought the gift of yoga and allowing the women to become, you know, involved, they're still kind of stuck in another, you know, way of thinking. Um, and it is in a different culture for sure. And we've changed it
True.
so much, you know, here, you know, the yoga is not being practiced by the rich, wealthy men, as it was traditionally in India, but it's like more so the middle class women and the upper middle class women. And then somewhere in between, you know, and I mean, but I made it happen. I can remember when I was only making $125 a week, and I still was able to get 2 yoga classes in a week, actually 4, because I was going to 2 yoga classes, with Ann Davis and then with Daniel Lyons. Um,
Okay.
so yeah. So speaking of money, um, did you make money? How did it go? Like that, having a donation class, that work for anybody? How did that work?
Well, okay, so 25% of the people understood what donation yoga was. The other 75% of the people would ask me, what is donation yoga? I
Mm,
thought it was self-explanatory, and not so much. So it was about the 6 month mark,
hmm
and I yoga teacher said to me, she goes, you know, you're in Saratoga, and Saratoga is a little bit wealthier than some of the surrounding areas. I don't know that you're going to, you know, going to get the people that you want to come because they don't really understand it. They just want to pay for a class.
hmm
So I let it ride for a few more months. I think it might have even been a year. It's been a little while now. I can't remember. And then finally, I just went, okay, we're just gonna do it. So the yoga studio. It took a little while then to get it from donation yoga to pay for classes,
hmm
and then of course I had selective teachers at the time because some of them didn't want to teach donation classes and some of them were all about it. Oh, I love donation yoga classes. This is great. So then I had to transition. And while I was doing that, you know, it probably was the most least profitable, you know, time.
hmm
And so what I did to augment that is I started teaching privates.
mm
And that is another specialty of mine now because some people come into class and they're not really prepared to be in class. They need, they just have issues that you
mm
really wonder if they would be okay going through a yoga class. You know,
Yeah.
would they be safe?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, yes, but so the most profitable year was the last one before the pandemic.
Mm.
Yes. And that was a little bit hard, you know, because things were going, classes were filling, it was really good. You had to, right. I had gotten the formula where I was grounding my energy, understood how important it was, you know, being a little more particular about who was teaching and how they were teaching it. No offense to the teacher, but you know, it when the studio is yours and you have other teachers there, they are you,
Yeah.
an extension.
Mm.
Um, so yes, I would say that if I had to do it all over again, I
Mm.
would probably really sit down and say, okay, what area am I in and how what would be best to serve people here?
Yes.
I
So
did not do
true.
that.
I have found that offering free people for whatever reason, the way that this culture works, we do not process that as being valuable.
Yes, that is
And
what.
yeah, and when I try to offer something free, people don't come. But if I charge for it, and I charge the right amount of money for it,
Yeah.
what's really value, for my time, I consider my time and what is this really worth for me, then like it flows. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, balance, and you're right. It's crucial. And
Mhm.
and I will admit, when I first started the studio, in fact, it was actually Bridget Shea and I, that's where I'm teaching right now at her studio. We opened it up together. She felt overwhelmed being an acupuncturist, having that business, and then having the studio. So she said, okay, it's yours. That was a little bit of
Mm,
a surprise. But once, I stood there for a second and went, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So
mm,
part of the reason, and I just have to be honest about this, part of the reason that I offered donation yoga was out of fear.
mm.
Yes. And I thought, okay, I'll offer donation yoga, people will come, I'll get some more teaching experience down. But really that's where it came from. So in all honesty, I would have to say that that energy was out there, which is probably one of the reasons why it really didn't go over.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have to be grounded. I mean, I thought it was a great idea and I believed in it, so it wasn't, all bullshit. But
Mm,
there was part of it behind there.
mm.
Oh my gosh, I'm
Yes.
on my own now. I don't have support. That's what it felt like. Oh my
Right.
gosh, I don't have a partner. And she's the person who had the experience with the studio. But you can only do what you can do. And these were lessons I had to learn. So then I could reflect on that and say, okay, see what happens when there's fear behind the motivation. You got to get past that. That's just part of the process. It's okay.
Yeah.
Some self compassion,
Mm,
understand that things are scary and you can own up to the fact that they're scary, and then work through that and then come up with your heartfelt ideas, head and heart combined,
yeah.
and then it will work.
And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that the heart of the yogi that exists in you, that you had so much faith in humanity to offer donation yoga. Like when I heard you open the studio, I was like, what? Like she's got to be a saint, an absolute saint
Wrong.
walking on the face of the earth. And then there's also the social work aspect of it, right? Because we want to make yoga accessible to all beings.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And I have never worked with a yoga teacher that turned me away when I couldn't afford it. When I was making $125 a week and I was taking 4 yoga classes, I mean, that was like $40 a week.
Yes.
And that I could back then, because it was like $10 a class back then. And, they were like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Like it was no skin off their nose. Like I'm going to be teaching anyway. And not all yoga teachers are going to be like that. But there's always that teaching of the Swami that says, bring me at least one peanut, that like bring me one peanut or, write me a poem. And then I always did trades like you can't pay, no problem. Vacuum, dust, clean up the bathroom, the
Yeah.
classes are yours. Um, so we're getting close to the end. I can't believe it. So I know you have a demonstration that you wanted to share with us,
Okay.
and I want to recap your offerings with us too.
Okay. Well, thank you. Okay. So this is a breathing exercise, and all yoga teachers have know the importance of proper breathing. And in our society, we find it difficult to breathe slowly, pleasurably, so where that enhances our being and helps us be healthy. One of the ways to do that is diaphragmatic breathing. So it's a muscle. And at first, when you try this experiment that I'm about to show you, this exercise, your diaphragm may not necessarily go along for the ride, but just understand it's like any other muscle. You have to slowly work it.
Mm.
And I'm going to stand up here and I'll show you. I have a yoga strap that I'm putting here right underneath my breast. So it's still on my rib cage, right? And I'm going to tighten this so I can feel it. Right. Now, the next thing, I'm going to wait for Pam to get hers on. Take your time.
Should I stand up too? So
Yeah, sure. Okay.
all right.
This can be done standing. It can also be sitting. You can be lying down. All right. Now, when you breathe in through the nostrils, you're going to take the breath from the nostrils and bring it all the way down here, but it may not make it all the way down here. So what will happen is when you breathe in, if you feel your rib cage expand, which
I feel
I
it.
did that on purpose, so you might even see it moving. All right, now I'm going to take another breath, a gentle breath. So it's not the amount of breath, it's the direction of the breath. You're going to inhale through the nostrils and gently take the breath down into maybe this part of the belly. And exhale. And then inhale through the nostrils again. And maybe gently take it down into the lower belly. And then lower your shoulders away from your ears, let them go. And keep taking those gentle breaths like you're on vacation, moving past the rib cage and down towards the pelvis. And this may take a little bit of time, but you can practice this every day, 2, 3, 4, 5 breaths. Maybe start with 3 breaths. The next day it's 4 breaths. The next day it's 5. And this can relieve all sorts of tension in the body. It can help your jaw, your neck, your shoulders.
Wow, it can help your jaw.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Okay, so if you have your strap on, just loosen that up a little bit. And if you don't have a strap at home, don't worry about that. You can use rope. You can use your husband's tie. If you're a husband, then grab your tie. Anyway,
For your wife's
it's
tie. Anyway.
belt, anything. You
Whatever.
don't have to run out and get a special prop. That's one of the nice things about it. And then after you have completed this and you've used the strap for a while and you understand the direction of the breath, then you can practice it anywhere that you are. If you're having one of those anxious moments, just breathe. And
Mm.
that's the big takeaway is when you practice it enough, you will notice the difference, because when you breathe up in here, this is usually anxiety causing. And then you'll check in and go, well, gosh, I'm breathing in my chest. It would be so much better for me if I just would breathe and allow the energy to go a little bit lower in my body and help me ground.
Mm.
So I hope that explains that.
That was
Well, and if anyone has any questions, Pam also teaches breathing, so you can contact her. Or I teach at Ageless Healing Arts. It's 426 Maple Ave in Saratoga. And I have a Saturday morning class at 9 a.m. And then just to confuse you, I have a Wednesday class at 9:30. So
9:30 a.m.
9:30 a.m. Yes, they're both morning classes. Thank you for them.
Those
Evening
late
yoga.
night classes are starting to become more popular. So
Oh, true.
yep. And how do people get a hold of you? Is it like your website or email or go to Ageless Acupuncture? How do they?
Well, so for group classes, that's Ageless Acupuncture. If you're interested in a private, and I also do group privates as well. So say, for example, you have a girls get together or family reunion, something like that. You would go to namasteyogasaratoga.com. You can email me at, I just changed my email address. Okay, just go to namasteyogasaratoga.com, and you can always contact me via text at 518-222-7470.
That's great. Um, you did have a hedgehog you wanted to show us before
Oh,
we
a hedgehog. Thank you for that. Okay, so here is a hedgehog, and this one is a medium-sized hedgehog. And the reason that I use these is one of the other issues I found in the body is how disconnected from the feet we are. So this is something that you would step on. And if you've never used a hedgehog before, particularly if you're not a person that goes around in bare feet, you don't go outside in bare feet, then your feet need a challenge. And that's why you're going to step on this. Because think about if you always walk on a flat surface in shoes, this is the experience that your feet have. And then if you suddenly go out for a hike, you're going to notice that they're very sore. It will then affect your knees. It then affects your hips. So this is a modern way to start to recondition your feet. So what you would do is I have 2 of these and I just walk all over them. At first I started out at like 20 seconds and I put socks on. And then slowly I graduated to about 5 to 10 minutes. And sometimes I'll do it for like 3 and then do a little bit of a different practice and come back to it. And it's helped a lot. So
Mm.
hedgehogs are really inexpensive. I think this is like, they're like $10.
Oh, great.
So definitely, you don't have to have a pair, but if you do, you can even create a little hedgehog obstacle course where you step all over. It's fun for kids too. Kids love it. I teach kids yoga too. And they think that's super fun. So, but you'll really, really, really help your feet. And it helps your health. It helps your alignment. It's really important. So thank you for mentioning
Oh,
that,
yeah.
Pam. I completely forgot about
Is
that.
that something we might experience if we come to your class on
Yes, I do
Saturday?
have those.
Oh, and that's great. I love that.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've been wanting to get to that class for a while, so I really hope I do.
The
So,
Saturday morning class, we do that one. Yeah. I have everybody step on one. They love it too. So
oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. So thank you so much. I'm Pam Medina from the Yoga Lily Teacher Training Program, and thank you so much, Susan, for
Pam,
joining
thank you so much
today.
for having me. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad to visit with you today, and I hope to talk to you soon. Thank you, everyone.